Member for Toronto Danforth.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, today I rise to support the private member's bill brought forward by the MPP for Scarborough Agincourt, a private member's bill to commemorate the Massacre of Nanjing. In 1937, Imperial Japanese forces engaged in a brutal act of massacre and rape, targeting soldiers and civilians in the Chinese city of Nanjing over a period of 6 weeks. The government of China states that 300,000 people were killed. Speaker, one of the most haunting images that comes out of the attack on Nanjing is one of an infant, maybe a year old, sitting alone, abandoned and crying on a railway platform in a bombed-out station. That image, not as gruesome as many of the others, encompasses the absolute devastation that was rested on that population. The events did occur, and although remembered in China and other parts of Asia, the knowledge in the rest of the world is limited. And in Japan, the reality is contested or denied by right-wing and nationalist groups. Although we humans are not very good at learning from our history, we're even worse when we deny that history actually occurred. And for this, I want to thank the member for bringing forward the bill, because this is a part of history that should not be forgotten or obscured. It is, however, contested, and that without a doubt. The newspaper The Guardian reported a month ago that the Japanese government was withholding funds from UNESCO because of documents related to the massacre. And I quote, "Japan is holding back more than £34 million in UNESCO funding following a protest against the listing of documents related to the Nanjing massacre." Japan, one of UNESCO's biggest funders, warned last year that it might pull the funding after the UN cultural and scientific body agreed to Beijing's request to register disputed Chinese documents recording the mass murder and rape committed by Japanese troops after the fall of the Chinese city of Nanjing in 1937. Speaker, in my mind, it is entirely clear that we need to face up to and acknowledge the reality of the brutality of the 20th century. We need to be clear about the economic chaos and the great power nationalism that was used by dictators to secure and hold power, and the use to which they put that power. If we want to help ensure that we don't repeat the mistakes and massacres of that time, then we need to first remember that they actually happened. We need to remember that assumptions of racial or national superiority lead to the very darkest nights of human experience. We need to remember that scapegoating of individual religions or ethnic groups, when mixed with explosive anger over desperate economic circumstances, can lead to these kinds of large-scale human tragedies, these kinds of large-scale human crimes. For the right-wing and nationalist forces in Japan that claim that the massacre never happened, it is very important that the leaders of that country know that the reality is understood, acknowledged, and recognized around the world. Our taking this position limits the room for denial of the reality, and that forcing the recognition of that reality is valuable on its own right. For the survivors and their descendants, it's important that they're honoured and that their memory is kept alive. For the people of Ontario, there is also the recognition that we all came here by many different ways, and that our history is rooted in Asia, just as it is rooted in Europe and in Africa. That our makeup as a society has been touched by these historic events, and they are as valid and real a part of us as any tragedy or crime against humanity that happened in Europe over the centuries. We are a people of many origins, and it is well that we learn all the parts of our origin story. Speaker, it's my hope that this bill passes and becomes part of our memory of history, so that we can remember where humanity can go wrong, and so that we will take the steps to avoid going down those pathways in future. Thank you, Speaker.